Hello and welcome to the YouTube Opening to Utter Totality channel. My name is Frank Reynolds. Thank you for your interest in Opening to Utter Totality. And also thanks to the people at YouTube and Google for providing this resource. Utter Totality videos are produced in White Pine Studios at a hilltop location in the Upper Valley region of New Hampshire, cloud-shrouded, whereabouts unknown. Utter Totality is a translation of the Tibetan term Zopa Chempo, commonly contracted to Dzogchen, and usually translated into English as great perfection. Dzogchen, or great perfection, or utter totality, refers to a school or vehicle of Tibetan Buddhism. And that's as much as I want to say about that in this introduction. But I do also want to mention that Opening to Utter Totality is largely concerned with supporting Zoom groups for the practice and study of certain meditative and contemplative teachings. So we're not mainly going to be producing videos, I don't think. This is only our second video, and I don't see much occasion to do many of them, but I did want to post this second video, at least, related to a particular meditative contemplative practice that might interest you. By way of general background, Dzogchen, which in Sanskrit is rendered as Maha-ati, which, as I said, is often translated as great perfection in English, but for which I like the translation utter totality. Dzogchen, or Maha-ati, and the other school or vehicle most closely related to it in Tibetan Buddhism, Mahamudra, usually translated as great seal or great symbol. Mahamudra is Sanskrit, and in Tibetan the term is Chakya Changpo, but usually you hear Mahamudra. In any case, these two, Dzogchen and Mahamudra, are considered the pinnacle or highest teachings of Tibetan Buddhism. They're considered that by Tibetan Buddhism, not necessarily regarded that way by other schools of Buddhism, but I that's way beyond what I want to get into today. The distinction between Dzogchen and all of the other schools of Buddhism, to be very broad brush about it, is that all of the other vehicles, approaches, schools of Buddhism could be characterized as progressive or developmental, and I'll explain that in a moment. Dzogchen, or Utter Totality, on the other hand, is direct. So the distinction is developmental versus direct. Developmental means that the practitioner of this approach, such an approach, regards himself or herself as on a path from a starting point or present location toward another location, which is the destination, and is usually conceived of as distant from some distance, at least, from the starting point. So one proceeds from here to there. One develops from one's present state of confusion, let's say, to a future state of awareness, clarity, enlightenment. The developmental path. So to be on such a path, obviously, one has to regard oneself as needing to develop, needing to change or evolve from the way one is or the way one's mind is presently to some different mode of being, better mode of being, presumably. The developmental path regards the practitioner as having the essence or embryo of awakened awareness in a seed state or an embryonic state, and therefore it has to be nurtured and developed in order to fully manifest and flourish. The direct approach, on the other hand, and rather confoundingly and astoundingly, from my vantage point, says, no, actually, we're already completely and fully enlightened in essence. And hence, great perfection or utter totality means existence is already completely, pervasively, unceasingly pure and perfect. So it doesn't need to be developed at all. We don't need to go anywhere because this uh, mode or this condition is immediate and constant. So it's quite a different outlook. And of course, it begs the question, well, if this is the case, why am I not aware that this is the case? And that's the rub, that the view is that we are, in essence, fully awake, but we don't recognize it. So it's not totally accurate uh, that we don't have to do anything. uh, because we do have to operate in such a way that there's a likelihood that we'll experience and recognize this pure and perfect essence. And one traditional analogy is that cream contains the essence of butter, but it doesn't render butter or become butter unless we churn it. And the churning is an analogy for spiritual practice relative to bringing forth the essence of our own uh, true being or true nature or awakened mind. Another thing I want to try to explain is that you may be puzzled by my saying that the utter totality or Dzogchen great perfection approach, we don't have to do anything, and yet the remainder of this video, I'm going to describe a practice which I'm calling a enjoyment body non-meditation practice, but it's going to seem a lot like a practice, and therefore that we're doing something. So uh, what does this mean, not having to do anything? It means that we don't have to operate uh, not that we have to, not that we don't have to exert any effort in any direction, but we don't have to operate in a way that we would if we were trying to produce something, create something. This is because utter totality is already created, and it doesn't have to be created anew by us. So that's one simple way to explain what this paradox of doing versus needing to churn or exert effort. And then the other very general thing I'll say is that we're obviously communicating via words, therefore, within the frame of conventional language and our everyday minds or everyday intellects. But the experience of awakened awareness that all of this is pointing to is beyond the range of our everyday consciousness. So it's not that we cannot perceive it. It's just that we don't perceive it the way we habitually perceive just about everything else in our world, as objects separate from us, so that perception is dualistic. I'm here, what I'm looking at or looking into is over there, et cetera, et cetera. So it's beyond that. And therefore, it can be hinted at, pointed toward with conventional language, as I'm trying to do now, but it cannot be remotely described within conventional language, nor imagined within our conventional imagination. So I'm sure hearing that is frustrating and maybe a little confounding, but that's how it is. So we have to use language, but it's good to also be aware that the language is, as a traditional analogy says, simply a finger pointing at the moon. It's not the moon. And to perhaps convince you that we can experience things that we cannot conventionally describe, there's a couple of analogies. One is, I think it's fair to say that everybody knows what relief, the feeling of relief is, but I don't think it's likely anybody can describe that. The sort of like, I know art when I see it, but I can't define it. Or another analogy is that the brightness of a cloudless, sun-illuminated sky, that brightness has no objective form or shape. It's not an object in any conventional sense of object, and yet we're able to perceive it. So these are, as I say, these are analogies, hints, and maybe reciting a couple of them will convince you that it's not so far-fetched that there could be a range of experience that we can encounter but are not currently encountering or aware of, at least in terms of any ongoing, constant way, even though we may have glimpses from time to time when our usual habitual patterns of perception uh, break down or crack open. So we may hear or read that our existence in essence is already pure and perfect. We are in essence already and perpetually fully enlightened. That's all well and good. That may intrigue us for a while, but it's only a concept. So it will only intrigue us as a concept for as long as we want to play with it. And then it's going to be displaced by something else if it's only a concept. The only way it will truly experientially mean anything to us is if we somehow experience things this way. And then, like when you taste sugar for the first time, uh, nobody has to explain the taste of sugar to you if you've actually tasted it. So it's something along those lines. And therefore, one of the premises of the utter totality or great perfection Dzogchen approach is that we can relate with our existence as it is, such as it is, and discover, uncover, perceive, experience its great perfection and purity. Now, we don't perceive things that way now. We see a bunch of hassles and problems and attractive things that are beyond our reach, and so we're going this way and that way. Things happen out of the blue that we didn't expect and have to deal with, and blah, 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 blah. So, um, so obviously there needs to be some bridge from our current conventional conscious experience to this recognition or realization of our pure and perfect essence that I've talked about. And that's what that's why the cream has to be churned to render the butter. So what I'm about to give you is one and only one way of churning that you could try. And if you're interested, give it a fair try. It's not going to do anything instantly for anybody, in all likelihood. So you have to keep at it for a while, and just like I'm presuming butter has to be churned slowly, cream has to be churned slowly. If you churn it too fast, it doesn't become butter, it becomes whipped cream. So slowly, and then eventually butter starts to emerge. But it'll never emerge, even though that in essence, it's there already. It's within life, within our hearts already, but it won't emerge unless we practice. So here's one way to churn the cream. I call it enjoyment body non-meditation practice, because if you're experienced at all with meditation, it'll seem a lot like meditation, but it's non-meditation in terms of what I said earlier, that we're not making effort in the sense of trying to create anything, produce anything. Even an extremely peaceful, what you might call meditative state. Because if we can do practices which will, in the developmental approach, which will create a peaceful or meditative state, and maybe calm some of our emotional disturbances. But if it's created like anything that's created, it's impermanent. It's going to fall apart at some point because it's created. Whereas awakened awareness is uncreated, sometimes called unborn, unceasing, and also confoundingly non-existent, in the sense that it doesn't have the qualities of an existing object like color, shape, form, location. It doesn't exist in space or time as any kind of object, so it's non-existent, empty, etc. But regardless, yeah, so we're not trying to create any kind of state, because any state we created would be at best, say, a trance state. Instead, we're trying to put ourselves in a position where awakened awareness may at some point naturally unfold. Naturally. It may not. But if and when it does, we didn't make it happen. We just got out of the way and allowed it to happen, cleared some obscurations away. So it's like we say on a cloudy day where the clouds break and suddenly it's bright and clear, that the sun came out. Well, the sun never actually came out. It was always right there. But it's just that with clouds around, we didn't see it. But the sun itself never came or went. It's always present, always there. And likewise, awakened awareness actually doesn't come or go. It's always present, but it feels, that's why the term awakening comes about, because it feels like something is changing, that sunlight is breaking through, etc. Because we're just clearing away, been able to clear away aspects of our own mind and heart that obscure this fuller, deeper essence that we already have. But anyway, we're not developing it, we're not creating it, we're just trying to allow it the more opportunities to naturally manifest. So, all right, now with that longer than I expected preamble, here is how you do enjoyment body practice. Now, and oh wait, no, I have one more thing I want to say by way of preamble, which is, as with, I think it's fair to say, virtually all of the current secular and spiritual mindfulness and meditation trainings that are around, whether they say it or not, these teachings and practices are rooted in the Buddhist tradition. And, there's various forms of Asian Buddhism. There's Tibetan, there's Southeast Asian, there's Zen, Japanese, Chinese, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm making no secret that these practices are rooted in the Buddhist tradition, but you don't have to be or consider yourself a Buddhist to do this practice, nor by doing this practice, if you try it, will you become a Buddhist formally. I'm not recruiting. No salesman will call, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't, nor do I want to play the game of not acknowledging where these approaches and views come from, and therefore where you might go if you want to get a fuller, more panoramic understanding of it. But you can just do the practice. You can just taste the sugar, and you don't necessarily need any explanation, verbiage, brand identification, certification, credentials, anything like that. So, all right. Now I can say, without further preamble, here is how to do this enjoyment body non-meditation practice. If you have a meditation cushion, you could do this on your meditation cushion. However, I actually would be more inclined to suggest that you simply do this in your seated in your living room or some familiar area of your home. And even if you have a meditation space at your home, maybe in this case, you don't occupy that or sit on the cushion, you sit in your living room and sit instead, or your dining room table or whatever. But wherever you choose, you need to ensure as best you can that for about a half an hour there will not be any interruptions or distractions. So, nobody coming or going, no toddlers running around that you have to take care of, no phones that can ring or beep. Anyway, any other kinds of distractions that can interrupt you. Phones off, and no computer, no emails alerting you, and so on. And then take a seat, and you should have some sort of timer that you can set for half an hour. So if you have a meditation timer already, whatever, that will maybe gong at the end rather than beep like a kitchen timer, that's really good. And you set that for half an hour. But don't, once you start it running, don't set it up where you can see the face of it and watch the time, and therefore be telling yourself, oh, I've only got 15 minutes left or whatever. You want to turn it so that you can just go into this practice, and then at some point your timer will go off and you stop the practice, but you're not counting the minutes and seconds while you're doing the practice. So then seat yourself, and this practice is done with the eyes open. Here's a very concrete example of how with Utter Totality Dzogchen approach, we can just relate with whatever's arising, whatever's actually going on in our everyday world at the moment, because that is an emanation of awakened awareness. So we don't have to go to some meditation center, shrine, spiritual place with statues and brocade and so on. We can just relate with where we are on a very everyday basis. And that's what we're doing. We're literally doing that in this case. And that's one reason why I suggest sitting in your living room rather than your shrine room if you happen to have one. So, all right, so setting the timer for half an hour, sitting, eyes open, and the practice is to simply relax for that half an hour with your eyes open. And relate with your sense perceptions. So pay attention to your sense perceptions of whatever you see, hear, smell, feel, etc. in that space during that time. So your visual consciousness will probably be the most prominent. Vision is the most prominent. So just relate with colors, shapes, so on, in a very relaxed way. And see what happens. Now, probably you're, as with meditation, uh, your thinking mind isn't, there's no knob to shut off thinking. So thinking continues to occur, and sometimes being a sort of a devilish function that thinking is, it's mixed blessing, a boon and a curse at the same time. Thinking will carry you completely away. And, so there'll be times when you just be daydreaming, you forget uh, your intention to practice and everything else. And then, so then you need to just come back and resume the non-meditation. So you stop not meditating and resume just not meditating. And if your distraction, your internally generated distraction, thoughts and emotions, which are just heavy-handed thoughts that are built up from subconscious gossip, thoughts, fantasies, whatever, if they really just get way too much and very frustrating for you, there are a couple of techniques to use. So try to do the practice just openly initially, and then use the techniques if you've got a really overwhelming tsunami of distraction going on from your own mind and emotions. And the technique is very simple, which is when you recognize that you've been carried away by thought or emotion or emotion, simply say to yourself, not out loud, but say to yourself internally, thinking with a very light touch. The Tibetan teacher Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, with like a feather touching a bubble or a feather touching a balloon, something like that. Very light touch. Just say thinking. And then go back to a shift to awareness of your breath, particularly your out breath. So just awareness of your out breath. And then, along with that, the awareness of your environment and your sense perceptions. So again, you can drop the technique when you feel like you're simply resting in your sense perceptions, and you can employ the technique whenever that has gone off the rails and you're caught in thought. And that's it. Do that until the timer goes off. And then, so each session, I'm saying half an hour is a good amount of time. Probably 20 minutes is the minimum amount of time that there'd be any point in doing this. And you could do it for longer, but maybe up to an hour or whatever. But the point is not to make a marathon, colossal project out of this. Point is just to do it from time to time. And probably the most I wouldn't do in any given day, more than maybe a couple of sessions at different times a day. And in a week, uh, with some degree of regularity, I would say like more than once a week, but maybe 2, 3, 4 different days you do the practice at least once. Um, and like I said initially, this is no kind of instant fix or a secret sauce, finger snap kind of, here we are, instantly transformed. It's not going to work that way. It's a slow churning of cream into butter. And we have to just stick with it, be patient with ourselves and with the process, and do it. And also, if you have other spiritual or meditation practices, feel free to do them. At a certain point, if you come to identify yourself as a Dzogchen or Great Perfection or Utter Totality practitioner, primarily, then the progressive approaches are discouraged at that point or dropped, but I don't think there's any need to worry about that initially. The idea is to try this practice, see what your experience is, see how your general experience is after you include this sort of practice in your life, and then go from there. Be advised by your own experience, or as a Tibetan saying goes, of the two witnesses, hold the principal one. In other words, go by what you yourself experience and know, rather than what others or the world or whatever sources you listen to may say. Hold the principal witness, go by your own experience, see what happens, and good luck. So that's it for now from the White Pine Studios in a hilltop location in the scenic Upper Valley region of New Hampshire. This is Frank Reynolds signing off, wishing you good luck and great good fortune. Bye.